Now that you've successfully installed CocoaPods, it's time to install your first pod for your project. In this lesson, I'll show you how to work with a pod file and how to generate an XC workspace project that includes a CocoaPod. You should still have your terminal up and running. If not, go ahead and open it up. The first step is to navigate to the directory where our project lives. So let's first locate it inside our Finder. So in my case, it's pretty easy. The project folder is just nested in my desktop folder. So what I want you to do is notice how this is the containing folder for our Xcode project. So you want to select this parent folder. And then inside terminal, you're going to write cd for change directory, which effectively means navigate somewhere else. And then you're going to click and drag this folder into the terminal so that it puts the entire pathway that is required to get hold of that FlashChat iOS 13 project. And then we're going to hit enter. And notice how here is now changed to show that we're currently located inside this folder. So you can see that terminal, the command line, is almost like a parallel system to this graphical user interface, which is the Finder. And we can pretty much do exactly the same things that we can do in Finder. For example, when we're inside FlashChat-iOS 13, we see it at the top of our Finder, and in Terminal, we see it right after the name of our computer. So now when we're here, if we want to see what's inside this folder, we can use a ls command, which is going to list all of the things that this folder contains, same as over here. Now, what we want to do is inside this FlashChat-iOS 13 parent folder, so the one that contains the Xcode project, not this one, which is parallel to the Xcode project, it's here that we want to run the command pod init. And what this will do is it will initialize a new pod file. So once I hit enter, you'll see that pod file appear right here. And then we're going to open this pod file. Now you can do that in a number of ways. The easiest way is to simply right click and then click open with and then select other. And then we're going to find Xcode in here. And select Xcode and then select it as always open with this application. Go ahead and click open and it should now open that pod file using Xcode. So now we have to format this pod file so that we actually add the pod that we're interested in. And to get some practice with CocoaPods, the pod that we're going to add is the CL typing label. This pod contains a bunch of code that allows us to do text animations in our project. But let's first turn our attention back to our pod file. So first, some formatting. It wants us to define a global platform for our project. So notice how this code file actually looks quite different from what we're used to seeing. This is because this is actually written in a different language. This is actually a Ruby file. And in Ruby, instead of having comments like this, they have comments created using the £sign. So therefore, this line and this line, they're all commented out. So let's go ahead and uncomment the next line by deleting the £sign here to define a global platform. And what this platform does is it allows you to define the minimum iOS version that you want your app to support. So in this case, it's saying the iOS platform 9.0 or above. So you can, if you wanted to, say that, well, actually my app is going to only be run on phones which are running iOS 13 or later. And in certain cases, we're going to see a little bit later on, certain pods or certain third-party libraries have a much higher requirement because they're using more recent features of iOS or of Swift. In our case, we're going to leave it as 9.0, and I'm going to delete this top comment as well. And then down here, we're going to delete this other comment. So we now have a single comment that says pods for FlashChat iOS 13. And between that line and end is where we're going to add all of our pods. So if we go back to the CL typing label page on CocoaPods, you can see that it tells you to add this line to your pod file. So let's copy that and paste it right here, and then go ahead and hit save. So now that our pod file is saved, we can close down this project and go back to our terminal app. And here we're going to run the command pod install and then hit enter. So this is going to go and fetch the pod file from CocoaPods and install it into our project. Now here's an important part. Notice how it tells you to close any current Xcode sessions and use the file flashchat.ios13.exe workspace for this project from now on. As long as you don't see any problems here, then we're ready to go ahead and work with this new file. So if we head back over to our project, FlashChat iOS 13, you can see that there's some new files that have been added here. And this new file that's been generated, FlashChat iOS 13.exe workspace, is what we're going to be working on from now on. And the big difference is that our original Xcode project has a blue icon, and this workspace that contains our pod files has a white background. So make sure that you're actually now using exclusively this file. And if you get some problems down the line, such as strange errors that you can't solve, just check to make sure that you haven't accidentally used this blue file instead of the exe workspace or the white file. So let's go ahead and double click on this white file and then open it up. And you can see that you have the pods and you also have your original FlashChat project. Now, if I expand this FlashChat iOS 13 folder, you can see that we've still got the same files as we had from before. But there are some differences with the exe workspace project. At the bottom of the project pane, you can see the pods that we've added, and you can also see the pod file that we've edited. In the next lesson, I'll show you some potential problems with pod installation, and in the process, you'll get a deeper understanding of how pod versioning works and how pods can be updated. So hopefully I'll see you there.